ready. I'm ready when you are. All right, welcome to SiNaCa Studios, Open Studios Night, December 2022. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. In the spirit of the season, we want to wish you guys all a happy holidays. I hope you have a chance to spend some quality time with family and friends and enjoy this time of year as it comes to a close. SiNaCa Studios is all about community. We do a lot around here. All kinds of classes. If you're interested in what we do, you can check out our website. Throughout the broadcast, we will be manning the chat. So if you have questions, type them in and we'll do our best to get them to whoever you might want to ask and answer those questions. So it's December, and in the tradition of community, we're honoring an old friend of ours. One of the pioneering glassmakers in North Texas was Jim Bowman. And every holiday season, Jim Bowman would have a party and a market and a sale, and he would light a tree. And so today we honor Jim Bowman once again. We built a wire frame, a metal frame, and we're going to wind some hot glass around it and create a glass Christmas tree. And it has a little wood in the bottom so it'll catch on fire and light up. So we're lighting our tree tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I want to recognize the team. Heidi and Jean and Kanan and Kevin and Brandy and Nick are all here. We have an incredible team to help us with all that we do. So I want to recognize them. I also want to recognize the Texas Commission on the Arts, the City of Fort Worth, the R4 Foundation, the Ann L. and Carol Green Roads Charitable Trust. We get a lot of support. As a nonprofit, we do all kinds of public programming, all kinds of outreach programming, and we're super grateful for all that they've done to help support our mission and our vision as we continue to bring glass art to the Fort Worth and North Texas area. So, looks like we've got a flame going out there. So follow me into the hot shop and we're gonna light the tree. Happy holidays, everybody. All right. That looks like a good start, Gav.
Thank you guys for coming in tonight. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We're just finishing up our Christmas tree right now, kind of talking with everyone gathered around. In a second, we're going to be switching over into our hot shop and we'll be doing our demo for the evening. We're going to be making the components of a snow globe this evening. So we already have a really nice round shape already established for the outside of the snow globe. So in a second, we'll be transitioning to where Kevin and Clifton will be working in the hot shop, and they will be working on the inside. We'll be doing things like making small trees, small little maybe like house, presents, stuff like that for the inside of a snow globe. Awesome. So currently Kevin's just setting up some colors at the moment. I believe we're going to be doing a black base for the inside of our snow globe this evening. And we're going to be building all of the interior parts, and then we're going to eventually assemble them all onto the platter. And then after we do that, we will go ahead and transition over into attaching them all together. And then we will applying a nice soft color of white, like snow on top. So we have some initial colors set up over here. So these will be some of the base colors that we'll be starting off with. Like I said, we'll have a black base for the bottom of our nice object to start off with. Looks like we're getting some last minute colors set up as well, just to add in. Wanted to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We always appreciate you guys coming in to watch, both in the studio and online. Remember, if you guys do have any questions, you can send them through the chat. They'll come our way and we'll be able to answer them for you guys. So we're starting off by getting a little bit of glass at first. Okay. Cliff is going to go ahead and start off with some layers of glass color. Right now he's just applying a small amount of frit on the outside. Now frit is little crushed up bits of glass for us. As you previously just saw. Say what? So he'll take that frit that we have on the end of the glass. Remember that crushed up little bit of glass is the frit. And once a thin layer is attached, he'll go ahead and reheat it. Make sure it's nice and hot. And he's using a tool called the tag, or taglipelia. It's a nice flat metal tool with a handle that we can use to make some marks. Once the marks are made, he's going to go ahead and start stretching those out. And it looks like the initial start of what is going to be a Christmas tree almost. the trunk of the tree.
So we're building all the parts that are going to go inside the snow globe. We can't assemble the snow globe hot. We're going to assemble it once we put all the parts.
Yeah. So for reference, Clifton right now is currently making the nice stump to the tree, and then we will eventually be working on combining all of the pieces together into the final element. We have an example of our snow globe example, and so we have the snow globe part already made, but what we'll do tonight is we will go ahead and make all the base parts for it on the inside. Once all of the inside parts are made, then we will go ahead and attach them all, and once everything cools down, we'll fully assemble the snow globe. And so Cliff currently is just touching up that brown stump. That brown stump's going to be the base starting point for us to be able to make our tree that we're going to start off with at first. So Clifton's currently getting another little bit of layer of glass on top of that. And once again, he's going to be applying another layer of colored glass on top of that. Anytime we apply colored glass on top of anything, we always have to make sure it's going to be reheated. So that way we have a nice hot surface that we can work with. It also helps to smooth out all the textured areas and make sure there's no sharp spots as well. So now Clifton's going to go ahead and start applying color over on the other side, while Kevin is currently working on what appears to be the base of our tree. And so whenever we're working in the studio, we have to make sure that both of the people working at the same time are on the same page. So Kevin and Clifton are consistently communicating about what needs to be done within the studio. Cliff's making sure that they're both at the same pace to be able to start working together. So Cliff currently has some green on his. I believe Kevin's working with some black on his.
I'm making presents.
So Kevin's just informed me that we're actually switching it up a little bit. Clifton is still working on the tree aspect of it, but Kevin is actually working on presents. So you can see he's pressing it on the marver. A marver is a metal table that we use to actually shape and cool the glass. And so by pushing it down on each of those sides, we're creating more of a boxed form.
Nice warm December. Yeah, it is. Like Texas.
So Kevin's furthering shaping that up using that tag that we already talked about. Tag being that flat edge tool that he's able to use to be able to sharpen up those edges a little bit more, making our present a little bit more present-like instead of a glob of glass. Now one of the fun things is that our studio, the hot shop, is called the hot shop because it is so hot. Our furnace in the middle of the studio stands at about 2100 degrees, 24/7. And that furnace holds about 350 pounds of molten clear glass. Now we've had that furnace open for the last 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so consistently, so it's feeling very hot this evening for sure.
You put some watermelon up, Kev?
No, it should be in the bag back there.
Oh, it's right here.
I got distracted.
So the clear is in the furnace, and then we can put colors on it in lots of different ways. So I stuck some big chunks of green in there. We also have some green that comes to us from like sugar flour.
So once again, Kevin's just sharpening up those edges. If you're just now joining, we want to thank you guys for tuning in this evening. SiNaCa Studios is a nonprofit organization where we try to outreach towards the public and educate them with all of the amazing aspects of glass and everything that we can do. While we are watching the hot shop this evening, we do have a total of 3 studios. So we have not only the hot shop that's in here, but we also have the kiln forming studio, where we're able to work with flat glass and use controlled ovens to heat them. We also have a torch working studio as well. Torch working is where we have glass that's already come to us cool, and we have solid sculptures that we can have. And we eventually heat those up with a torch and create a lot of smaller objects. And last but certainly not least is our hot shop, which is where we're at this evening. We're able to do quite a lot in the hot shop, from blowing hollow objects to making large bowls, vases, and platters, to creating amazing sculpture that you're going to be seeing tonight, and almost everything else in between. And if you're just joining us in, remember we have Kevin is working currently on a present, and Clifton at the moment is currently working on a tree. And these will all be for the inside of a larger snow globe that we're making. So they're each working on their own individual components, and we'll allow those to cool down. Once they cool down, then we will go ahead and transition them over into a larger form, being able to attach all of them to a platter. And that platter will eventually allow us to create a snow globe. So as a reminder, we do this once a month. It's the second Friday of every month. And the idea is that we want to be able to educate the public and bring out different artists to be able to showcase what they're working on, as well as get everyone a chance to see some of the greatest glass blowing that we have. And so this month we're focusing on creating the tree and also working with the public and ourselves and creating a very nice snow globe this evening. So Kevin's gone ahead and heated up just the very tip of that present right there. Then he's going to go ahead and heat those edges a little bit more. What's really nice is that this yellow torch that Kevin has right now can be used to spot heat. Now, spot heating is good for multiple different instances. One of the best things that spot heating is good for is to make sure that we can manipulate specific areas. And so you can see he's heated each of those sides, so that way whenever those get hot, those will move. But it allows everything else to be cold so they'll stay in spot, which allows him to create those creases that you can see. So once again, going over it with the torch, trying to heat up just those specific areas. That way when he touches them, only those are going to be able to move. We have a multiple different types of torches. We have the yellow torch, or the map gas that you guys just saw. We also have a larger torch, a fluffy torch, which we may use later in the evening, but it creates a large propane flame that allows us to heat a large amount of glass. And then we also have a very small flame torch that holds at about 3,000 degrees. And if we want really fine sculpting, then that's what we use. So you can see Kevin's just furthering in those creases. At the same time, on the other side, Clifton's actually gone ahead and taken all that color that he was working with and created our tree pattern. And so what he's done is he's gone into a optic mold, a casted aluminum mold or iron mold with ridges. And so whenever we place the glass into those molds, we get those nice fins that you get that represent kind of an abstract little tree there. Now when glass blowing first started out, it actually was a lot of molds that first took place. So there were a lot of molds that were used to create shapes over and over and over again. Those were actually some of the first blown items in glass. Eventually the craft was advanced further and they could eventually make more spherical looking shapes, more organic looking vessels, cups, bowls, platters. But for the most part, a lot of them were done with the mold first off. So you can see what Cliff's doing is he's going to go ahead and cut each of those fins. Now each of those fins being cut is going to be a little individual part of a tree. And so what's great is that he's taken that shape of the optic form and now he's giving that tree more life. By cutting these individual fins, they're going to represent more of a winter tree. So we have all of those individual little fins cut now. Clifton's going to go ahead and reheat it inside of our reheating chamber. Now our furnace, as we talked about a little bit earlier, our furnace stays on 24/7. The entire time that we need to blow glass, it is staying on. So it is on 24/7 for a majority of the year. Those reheating chambers actually come down, so we'll turn them off at the end of the night. You can see now Cliff is taking tweezers, grabbing a very specific point, and then he's going to go ahead and cut a couple more little branch like leaves. And he's really just fine-tuning the shape right now. One of the key things that Cliff's doing though is that whenever he's heating, he doesn't want to heat too much. And so you can see once again he's using that torch to make sure that he has a really specific heat in areas. It also appears to be reducing. Now reducing is what happens whenever we have a flame that is rich with propane. And so what'll happen is that flame, as it goes over the color, will actually bring the metal that's inside the color up to the surface. So the silvery look that you can see to the tree right now is because that flame has allowed that glass to heat and the metals get pulled to the surface. So what's really nice is that we can do that reduction effect for a multitude of things. Cliff was using it to get a little bit more silver out of there. The other thing too is that that torch is also heating those very specific areas. As we've talked about previously, it's really important whenever we're sculpting like this to be able to heat specific areas so we can make creases like Kevin did on the present, or we can cut these fins or shine the fins of the tree. So at this point, Cliff's really just shaping that tree a little bit further. He's taking that wide base that he originally had, and now he's kind of lengthening out so that way it resembles a taller tree. And so he'll take that tag that we talked about, kind of shape up a couple areas. Now, anytime we touch any type of glass with a metal tool, it's going to cool that glass, which we can use to our advantage. As you saw a second ago, Cliff touched the back of the glass right near the metal pipe. What that allows us to do is cool that area off so it doesn't move. You can see he's kind of pulling that tree up, kind of moving it around. He's going to go ahead and reheat it again. And if you guys hadn't seen before, this is that mold, as we can see. It has the metal fins on there, so that's how we got that original shape. So you can see when we kind of look inside, it has all of that pattern on there. And so when we push the solid glass on the inside, we get all of that really nice shape on there. So once again, Cliff's just going to go ahead and heat all of this up for us and pull out that branch again. He wants to make this a really nice tall tree. Now remember, our dimensions are going to be pretty small. the box that we had, or the sphere that we had for the globe, actually only has about a 5 to 6 inch opening in there. And so in reality, we're not making a huge amount of things. The glass that Cliff's working with right now is probably only about 2 inches at the base. Our height could go pretty high though. We have quite a lot of depth in this globe, so that's why we're not worried about how tall this tree is. So you can see Cliff just keeps heating areas, pulling it out. He'll heat it, reheat it in the reheating chamber, and then go ahead and pull it out again. So you can see with the glass, there's a lot of heat just right at the very tip. And so while he's pulling and crimping that off, he'll be able to cut off that section that he doesn't like as much. So he's heating it, wiggling it, and it eventually pops off. And he'll go ahead and reheat it. And what this is doing is that's helping to cool to soften up that tip of the glass. Anytime we cut glass off, even in its molten state, it's going to be very sharp. And so Cliff went ahead and used that heat, and you can see the orange at the very top of that tree. And that orange is what lets us know it's very hot. So anytime we cut something off, it's going to be a little sharp at the top. So by utilizing the torch, by utilizing that reheating chamber, we're able to soften up those edges of the glass. And if you guys are just joining us in, we want to thank you guys for tuning in this evening. We started off the evening with our tradition of kind of using clear glass to create a tree. And now we're on the inside of the hot shop. And inside the hot shop, we're actually using all of this glass to make the inside of a snow globe. So what we're doing at the moment is that we are using that glass and creating on the inside of that snow globe. So we have some presents, we have some trees that are being worked on. We may be working on a plethora of other things, it just depends. But right now we're doing all the sculptural aspects to it. So Cliff's just gone ahead and put away one of the pieces. And now he's getting a little bit more glass and some more color on it. It appears he's going to be making another tree for us. So what he's doing is he's applying his color first. And then after applying the color, he's going to reheat it. And apply a little bit more color. Now our color inside the shop is actually just broken bits of glass. And so we have different sizes. You can see some of these sizes are going to be really, really ragged and edgy. Those are going to be the larger sizes. And then we have this really nice powder as well. So Cliff's going into the brown at the moment. So this brown color, the second from the left, is going to be a nice amber color. But you can see, even when it's hot, it's still going to be nice and orange. So we have both Kevin and Clifton both working on individual pieces at the moment. I believe Clifton's taking care of the trees while Kevin is doing presents at the moment. And remember, these are all going to be individual components that we're going to later attach into a snow globe. So we can see the progress on Kevin's present. We can see he's getting it very hot using that marver, and this is also a metal marver to flatten those out. Now, a marver was originally a marble table that we would use back in Italy. Marble's a little bit expensive for our taste, so We decided to go with metal, as more commonly used now. You can see Kevin's kind of shaping up the back area that we'll be able to break off our present later on. He's also gone ahead and created some creases out of our blob of glass, giving us a whole lot of kind of that present quality of that wrapping all over it.
This is the stump of the next tree. And the first tree was the first to do a
So Kevin's going to go ahead and apply a little bit of water on that break-off line. Once that water's applied, what's going to happen is he's going to bring it over to our knockoff kiln. And our knockoff kiln is actually going to house all of our different components. So you can see the tree that Clifton already made. There's a couple presents in there. And this holds at about 900 degrees. So all that glass needs to stay at about 900 degrees. Once it starts to get to below that temperature, the glass wants to crack and break. So the idea is that we always try to keep it at above 900 degrees, and so we hold it inside of that furnace, or that little kiln there, so that way we can make sure that it'll be ready for later. Now, as I previously mentioned, we're creating all of our components first. Once the components are created, then we will go ahead and attach them to a platter later on. Plate, some place for it to sit. You may have seen Kevin just went ahead and grabbed one of our metal pipes. Now we have multiple different types of pipes. We have solid pipes, like the one Kevin currently has. We also have hollow blow pipes. So the hollow blow pipes allow us to be able to create those nice bowls and spheres, vases, plates, pretty much anything you can imagine we can create with those blow pipes. And that's one of the greatest inventions that we had in glass, because before it was previously mostly solid. And so currently we're using all the solid forms to be able to make these sculptures, but eventually at the very end, whenever we create that platter, we're going to go ahead and use a blow pipe when that stage comes. You can also see each of them after going into the furnace to get some glass in the end of our pipe. They're going to cool it off in our pipe cooler. One of the reasons is that metal heats up as it goes into our furnace. And so we need to make sure it's nice and cool so that way we're not burning our hands or anything like that. So Kevin's gone ahead and applied some color on top of his glass. He's reheated it to where all those sharp edges are now smooth, and now he's going to go ahead and use the metal top over here to create it. We're creating a small little house here. So he's going to take that glass, bring it over. Now it's just going to be a blob at first, but he's going to go ahead and use one of our best tools in the studio, the jacks. These long metal tools are used for a lot of things. You can see we can use the flat part to be able to soften up those edges and round them out. We can also use those pointy ends to be able to create our brake line or a jack line. Now this is one of the few tools that we actually don't get wet. Most of the other tools we do get wet, but our jacks are one of the few that we don't. We actually use a beeswax on it. And that beeswax is going to help us be able to make sure that it kind of glides across. And we're back to using the tag. Remember, the tag is just a nice flat metal piece. It's essentially a small marker that we can hold in our hand. Now the amount of tools that we have in the glass blowing studio are quite infinite. There's many glass blowers all over the world, and so they used all their own tools, all their own molds. They figure out what they like, and everyone kind of goes to one area or another. So Kevin's going to go ahead and shape that up a little bit more. What he's doing is he's using that tag to go ahead and flatten out those edges. And so he's using a combination of the tag and the marver that we already talked about. And that's creating those flat edges that we can use on the present. Going from the really nice rounded cylinder to a good rectangular prism at the moment. The past two were definitely a lot more square. But that's one of the fun things about glass, is that it's going to be an organic material, so sometimes it doesn't go exactly how we want it.
Never goes exactly.
And we're going to once again return to that map gas, or that torch. When we use the torch, it's really to heat up specific areas, so we can see that Kevin's focusing all that heat on the very top of the glass. And that's because that's the next area he wants to shape. He already likes the shape on the bottom part of our present, but the top is what we're going to be fixing up next. So by you, oh, a house, my bad. Glass is abstract as well, so. One of the coolest things about glass, I think, in my opinion, is that you think it's one thing, and then you look away for 20 seconds, it's completely different. A lot of the times that'll happen. Especially if you've ever seen us make a bowl or a platter or anything like that, a lot of the times, in a matter of seconds, we'll spin it very fast, and centrifugal force is going to carry the walls of that bowl out and literally fling out the plate. So it's common here that we have just a couple seconds to work with it, and then those couple of seconds completely change the look and shape of our glass. So we can see as Kevin kind of returns that back, the very top area of that house is going to be super nice and orange and hot. And once he runs that metal tool across it, it is going to cool, which is why that black kind of appears a little bit more.
What color is it?
White with dark amber brown.
Oh, like a gingerbread house.
Similar. So once again, if you guys are just joining us, we are SiNaCa Studios. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We focus on glass education and public outreach. And so we are always trying to educate and teach everyone about the joys of glass. And so in part by tuning in tonight, you are also taking a part of that. As we're kind of showing a whole bunch of different aspects. So every second Friday of the month, we usually have a visiting artist. We have some different artists that actually work in the studio to do glass blowing demos. And so this month, we're carrying on with our tradition. Earlier this evening, we made our glass tree, where we take a lot of clear glass and slowly build it up over time. And now we're currently carrying on with the demo portion of the evening. And so we have Kevin and Clifton, both original founding members of SiNaCa Studios, who are both individually working on parts for their snow globe that they'll be making. Kevin's making that little house that'll be inside of there. But it appears that Clifton is working on that tree. What's cool about the tree is that we take the blow mold, those metal molds, and we'll actually stick the glass into it. So Clifton currently is working on that at the moment. So we can see if we hop over to Cliff, we can see he's taking all that glass and actually he's gone into this mold already. This mold is going to have all of those metal edgings, and originally a lot of the glass blowing was made with molds. But as we bring it back, you can see the glass has already been influenced by that. We have those really nice sharp edges from the mold. And Cliff's gone ahead and cut a lot of those edges to make more of a tree shape. Now he's using our tweezers to lengthen out the tree shape. And he's going to use diamond shears to go ahead and make a little point that'll be easier to grab onto. And once again, he's using that torch to be able to make sure that the areas that he wants to be hot are going to stay hot.
So well, every rule, pretty much. I haven't gotten that excited yet. I mean, that only takes every once in a while.
So we can see that Clifton's really focusing a lot of heat on the bottom of the tree. If I had to guess what we're doing next, we're going to be actually either shaping that up a little bit or creating a small break-off point where that is. So he'll go ahead back to the heat to reheat it and reshape it. Once he likes that heat, he's going to go ahead and bring it back. And now he's going to use our jacks, one of the most versatile tools in the studio, and he's going to create that small break-off point. Any of the glass that we have in the studio, we always have to break it at the very end of it, which seems counterintuitive. But in order to get things off of our metal pipe, we have to create a small weak point that will be able to create a small vibration and actually break that glass off. So if you come in to blow glass with us at all, you're going to see every single piece is going to have that break point in it. Anything from ornaments to the tree that Clifton's making currently, to pumpkins, to blown bowls, or anything like that.
We never discussed how many. We'll just make a bunch of hearts.
So Clifton at the moment is currently reheating all of his glass, and he's focusing a lot of his heat on the very tip of that glass. The reason is as that glass kind of heats up, it's going to move very specifically. And by heating up those specific areas, we're able to cut those, we're able to soften them up, move them more. So glass is a constant dance between heating things up in specific areas, moving those specific areas, and then allowing different areas to cool down. Glass likes to move anywhere that it's hot. So if the glass is hot in a specific area, it's going to want to move there. And you can see he's not super deep into the hole. He's actually just right on the edge of it. And that's because he doesn't want the pipe to heat up. If he pushes the pipe all the way in, the pipe's going to heat up and he can't grab up as far. But he's going to go ahead and start bringing that back. And now that the tip's hot, he's going to use our diamond shears to create a small little cutoff point at the top and go ahead and pull that tree taller. Remember, if you guys do have any questions for us, you can go ahead and send them into the chat, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you guys have. Remember, we have these once every single month. We'll either feature different in-house artists and members of the studio. such as Kevin and Clifton this evening. Or we'll also have visiting artists. So last month we were working with Aaron Tate last month, which was a true pleasure. We had some fun sculptures going on that last month. And this month, to keep it festive, we're creating that snow globe that we talked about earlier. And so they're each crafting individual pieces that are going to fit into the bottom of our snow globe. So trees, the small house that Kevin was working on a minute ago, as well as some presents. And we'll see how advanced we get with our sculpting this evening. Clifton's talking about how his tree might be a little bit too tall. So he's going to go ahead and cut off quite a bit of that. So it's now definitely a lot shorter and it should be better to fit inside of it. One of the other great tools that we have is called a caliper. Now, a caliper is going to allow us to be able to measure out specifically lengths. So currently off screen, I'm measuring out the height for Cliff so he knows how tall he can get. This is the height. That works too, yeah. So you can see Cliff just held up a tool, our calipers, and that's going to allow him to be able to measure out exactly how tall his stuff can be. And so he's going to go ahead and put that away inside of our box. Same idea, he's going to go ahead and go over into our knockoff kiln. Put a little bit of water on that end. So he's going to put a little bit of water on that end. That little break off point. Open up the box. And then he's going to go ahead and tap it off on the inside. Breaking that glass off the end of the pipe. And it's going to sit in there at about 900 degrees. So glass doesn't like to be below 900 degrees. Once it reaches below that temperature, glass is going to want to start to break and crack. So we're making all of our pieces first, and then we're going to hold them inside of our knockoff kiln, which holds at 900 degrees. Now, one of the important processes of glass blowing is actually cooling down all of the glass. And so what will happen is at the end of the evening, after we're done with all of our work, we are going to go ahead and put it into one of our annealing ovens. Now what's great is that the size of our reheating chambers and the size of our holes don't matter. It's actually the size of the annealing oven that matters. Because you could make the smallest plate in the world, or you can make the biggest bowl in the world, and it wouldn't matter, because if you did not have a reheating, or if you did not have an annealing oven, glass would not cool properly, and it would actually break on the way down. That's why if you've ever taken a class with us before, if you take one in the future, you'll hear us say that the glass will not be available to take home today, because it's a long process. we have about a 12 to 16 hour cooling cycle that happens inside of the annealing oven. So all of this glass that we're going to finish up at the end of the evening, none of it's going to be cold enough until tomorrow afternoon, maybe even tomorrow evening. And so that annealing process, or that cooling down process of glass, is vital. And that's with any form of glass. One of my favorite stories to tell about that is that we have those giant NASA telescope lenses. And those lenses are so large that they can view into deep space. And NASA was developing one of the largest lenses, the size of a football field. And it took 2 years to cool down. So they waited for 2 years to figure out whether or not this glass was going to be okay. And they got to the end of that 2-year process and realized there was a crack in the lens, making it unusable. So they had to restart the entire process and create another lens that took another 2 years to cool down. That process went right, and then we eventually got one of the deep space telescopes. And luckily, we don't have to wait that long. As I said previously, in the hot shop, we usually only have to wait about 12 to 16 hours. So Kevin's currently working on a stack of presents. It's the same idea behind the previous presents and cabin that he made. All he is doing is creating a nice round shape and then flattening it out with the edges. And then he's just going to put a groove in between each one of them.
Don't get me all excited with the possibilities, man. Kill my enthusiasm.
I mean, I guess you just have to heat it and then.
So we want to thank you guys again for tuning in this evening. Once again, we're featuring our hot shop this evening. But if you guys aren't familiar, SiNaCa has so much more to offer. We focus on public outreach and public education. And as a 501c3 nonprofit, we have a focus on education and teaching people the joys of glass. So even though we're focusing on the hot shop this evening, we do have 2 other disciplines that we focus on in the studio as well. We have our kiln forming studio, which deals a lot with flat glass. And we're able to take these flat sheets of glass similar to mosaic style glass and use a kiln to actually heat it up over the course of a couple hours and melt and fuse it into nice plateware, platter objects. We can also do ornaments, and then casting complex shapes is also an option. The other studio that we have is going to be our torch working studio. Torch working studio focuses on getting glass that's already cooled, using a torch and then reheating that glass up to a temperature, and then eventually shaping it and moving it into different objects that we want. So a lot of the torch working studio area that we focus on is actually going to have smaller objects, such as pendants, little icicle ornaments, or a plethora of other stuff. So sometimes things don't go right in glass. What just happened is that Kevin was trying to heat up and break off a specific area, and the place that he wanted it to break didn't quite break as easily as he hoped. So he's going to go ahead and use that heat from that torch and reapply it, and reattach it. So we can see he's slowly kind of melting all that back together. What's nice about glass is that we can reheat it and reattach it to each other. So you'll see that later on this evening whenever we start to create the actual inside of our snow globe. We're going to create that platter and then use all of these individual objects to go ahead and reattach them to the platter. So Kevin's talking about how his break-off point was actually too sharp of an edge. So when he went to send that vibration to tap it, it broke on the wrong edge. So now what he's going to do is going to reestablish that heat in those areas, reshape it a little bit, and eventually try to break it off into our box again, our pickup oven. So you can see he's going to heat the very top, touch it with the tag to make sure it's nice and flat on top. Then he's going to come back, heat that little seam line in there, and he'll go back over and attempt to break it on that seam line on this next one. I'm assuming we're taking the stack of presents and making them an individual present on each one. I got a thumbs up from Kevin, so that's what we're doing. Yeah, initially Kevin wanted to have a really nice, good stack of presents, but feedback from multiple people it came more as an abstracted cube snowman. So now we're going to go ahead and take that influence and go ahead and reshape it. So he's going to go ahead and take our diamonds, create that crease again, flatten it out. And then he's going to go ahead and cool all those edges, make sure they're nice, flat. And if he's happy where it's at, he's going to go ahead and attempt to let it cool, create that stress area with some water on that line that he just made. And then he's going to attempt to tap it off and just get that bottom one on this one. See if it's successful on this one. And so he had a success. We have one present off now. And so now he has that second present that's on there. So he's going to go ahead and do the same thing with this one. He's going to go ahead and heat that top, bring it back down. And then he's going to go ahead and even out that edge, create that line, and then break it off. So we're going to travel over to where Cliff's working. Cliff's at the end process of his tree that he's currently sculpting at the moment. Now, one of the things you might notice is that a lot of their colors have been a little bit darker this evening, but Cliff is working with more of a silver color. What's happening is that he's torching it with one of our flames, and that flame is bringing out a nice silver color there. So you can see this yellow heating torch that he has is actually going to silver out those colors. And what's happening is that heat from that flame is going to bring the metal of the color to the surface, which is what's causing that silver reaction. We call this a reduction because of the type of flame that's being used. Now you think this torch was very hot, but actually we have a torch that's even hotter than this one. We have a torch that reaches almost to about 3,000, 4,000 degrees that we can use to really heat up specific areas. But what's nice about the map gas is that it's a little bit easier to use. It also isn't as harsh as a flame. So you can see Cliff's also taking that tag that Kevin was using, and he's redefining those bunches of leaves that'll be on that tree. For those of you guys who are joining us who may not know, Kevin is the one without the Santa hat, and Clifton has the Santa hat on. Cliff and Kevin are both original founders of SiNaCa Studios. For those of you who don't know, they are two of original 5 members that founded SiNaCa Studios in 2007, and they are still blowing glass with us today. Many of the other members have moved on to do board member positions and are still working with SiNaCa Studios in different capacities. But Cliff and Kevin work consistently every single week to make sure that they can teach public classes, work on different commission work for different public art institutes, do a plethora of other projects for SiNaCa Studios. So Kevin, in the meantime, has knocked off that other present. Cliff is coming back in with the tweezers to make sure that those little areas of tree branches and leaves are going to remain separate.
I've noticed your tweezers, Cliff, are hanging on the pegboard, by the way.
So once again, we can use that torch to heat up really specific areas, which is probably the best use of it. Kevin and Cliff are still going to be working on some stuff for a minute. I'm going to be jumping out for a minute. But I will be back in a minute or two. Meanwhile, Kevin will be working on that present while Cliff will be finishing up that tree.
Well, I was gonna say, if y'all are if you are at a point where you're gonna start assembling, maybe talk to the audience about what you're gonna do, and then yeah, get some water.
Who's making the Grinch? That's next year.
Did you say who's making the Grinch?
Yeah.
We are the Grinch.
Oh. Great name.
Don't let the red fool you.
That's why I wore all blue and gray.
Yes, to making more parts.
Yeah, I probably want to make at least one more little house at the very least. I've got at least 2 staff cabins.
Got that much surface area to work with.
Yeah. Tree.
So where's the cabins? Larger?
Oh yeah.
Cool. So we'll start with the cabin.
Okay.
We're gonna get that tall tree next to it.
Cool.
Let's see.
And then a present or two.
Yeah.
All right. So do y'all want to, before y'all get the next session going, why don't you guys just chat with the audience?
We're gonna take a break after we have this chat.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, just tell them it's on already. Go ahead and tell them
All right.
what we're making.
All right, everybody. So we're making a snow globe. We're gonna make the base black, and then we're gonna put a little pile of snow on it. And then in the snow, we're gonna put a little cabin, and then next to the cabin, we'll plant a tree, a little happy tree, and then we'll put a few presents. Kevin made some little presents. And then as we get all of that together, we'll see how much surface area we have left, because the globe is already made, so we kind of have a restriction as far as height as to how big the globe is. So we'll make put a little cabin, and then I'll sculpt it a little bit while Kevin picks up a tree. We'll put a tree, and then we'll place a little present under the tree or two. And then maybe we'll put on a little bow, or maybe do something fun to the cabin. We'll see how it looks and how much space we have. But thank you, Gene, behind the camera. Thank you, Kanan, behind the camera. Thank you, Brandy, behind the camera, and thank you guys all for tuning in. It's the end of the year. As a nonprofit, we rely on support. We have some wonderful foundations: the Texas Commission on the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, the R4 Foundation, the J.E.S. Edwards Foundation, the N.L. and Carol Green Rhodes Charitable Trust. A portion of this presentation was brought to you by all of those wonderful foundations that support SiNaCa Studios, but we also rely on individuals. Every dollar counts. So right now we have an end of year campaign going on. You can check out our website. There's a banner, it outlines it. You can click right there, and for a $50 donation, you can get the annual ornament to hang with your collection for all of you that are collecting over the years. I think we'll probably go in and show you those ornaments in a second into the gallery. But I just want to thank you guys all for your support and for tuning in today. And come see us, right? SiNaCa Studios is about education, it's about community. So if you'd like to come try, if you want to come play with us, come on down. We have glass blowing, flame working, and kiln forming classes. There's all kinds of great deals right now. So if you go online and buy a gift card, you can get a 20% off if you buy a $100 gift card. Hope that's accurate. And and then you can use it to come and participate with us. So thanks for tuning in. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll jump in and we'll start making the base of that snow globe. All right, everybody. Thank you.
So you guys, while our narrator and our glassblowers take a little bit of a break, I'm gonna show you guys into the gallery so we can talk about this, some of the cool stuff we've got going on in here. So if you haven't visited our gallery in a little while, we've changed it up a little bit. So make sure you come by and check us out. Clifton did talk about the end of year campaign, so I'll share that ornament with you in a little bit, but we've got it set up for the season. So if you're looking for some last minute gifts, you want to support local, come by and check us out. So Clifton mentioned the end of year campaign. If you've been collecting our ornaments for the past few years, we've got a new one this year that is rainbow in color. So it's got all sorts of colors. We'll go with any tree. So with a $50 donation, you get to pick whichever one you would like. We've also got lots of other stocking stuffers and things like that. So do come check us out. And don't forget about our 20% off. If you're getting a gift card at the end of the year and it's over $100, you get 20% off that gift card. These are some of the promotions we're running right now. Don't forget also, if you are not interested in taking a class here, or you don't want to come hang out, maybe people want to get together at home, we do offer glass kits that you can take home, our Take It, Make It kits. You can take those home with the family, work on a bunch of ornaments together or a bunch of other things, and bring them back to us to fire, and then pick up your finished work after that. So that's a nice way to hang out. Feel free to go to our website to check out all of this stuff. We've got an online gallery as well. We've got our classes listed online if you want to sign up and register to take a class with us, if you want to take a kit or purchase kits. Feel free to check those out online as well. And if you have questions about anything we're talking about tonight, feel free to post those in the chat. And while we're live, I can try and answer them, or I can have Kanan answer you guys, or we can respond back in the chat. These cool bowls. All right, so if you're hanging out with us online, give us about 5 minutes to kind of get warmed up. We're gonna start assembling this piece here in just a second.
We're a nonprofit dedicated to education, dedicated to community, and we use glass art and the creative process to help people to heal and to become interested in the visual arts, to become interested in science. A lot of our programming is focused around STEM concepts, STEAM concepts really, to include the arts. And we are a public access studio here for everyone. SiNaCa Studios was founded in 2010. We started offering program in early 2011, and we have over 30,000 people come and participate. The brand really illustrates community and bringing together the primary elements in community. We offer glass blowing opportunities, we offer flame working classes and workshops, and we also offer kiln forming classes. We've done programming for domestic abuse survivors, we've done programming for homeless kids and people who are looking to heal. We've used our process to help people to express themselves. One of our probably more powerful stories is about a young woman named Alexis who came in, and she had never worked with glass, and we did a kiln forming project, and she and her brother and several other students cast their ideas into thick pieces of glass, and she made a heart that helped her to express the loss of her father. Had a pacemaker. It was a real interesting piece, and it ended up going at auction to someone who had also lost their father, and it was a really powerful moment for all of us. She was struggling to express herself, and we helped her to find her voice and to make something that she could not only see how it could help her tell her story, but also to connect in the community and help someone else kind of heal through glass art. As SiNaCa Studio presents to foundations and to donors and receives support, oftentimes the support is specific to a project where we're bringing in kids that are connected with those foundations or with those donors, and that money goes specifically to offering this opportunity to people who wouldn't have it otherwise. The organization has a sustainability model where we generate revenue in many ways, and that revenue is what covers our overhead and keeps the organization going. The support oftentimes is specific to a program, so that 100% of people's donations go towards offering programming to people. Our outreach and our culture of outreach really drives us to find funding outside of that so we can bring the community in and offer programs specifically to our community. Thank you. We are a determined group, and I pledge that any support offered will be used in endeavors in the spirit of community, with kindness and generosity, and with fearlessness.
Welcome back, you guys. For those of you guys just joining us, my name's Kanan. I'm one of the instructors up here at SiNaCa Studios. Earlier this evening, we went ahead and did a glass sculpture for our tree. It's a tradition that we usually have. You can see now most of the confetti and everything kind of around it is burnt away a little bit more. Still plenty hot though. We still have a nice little fire going underneath. But as tradition is every year, we go ahead and get our glass instructors to go ahead and get some glass and bring it out to that tree and go ahead and wrap it all the way around. Those of you guys just joining us, previously we had been making elements to add to a snow globe. And so now we're going to start making that actual snow globe base. So the plan is that we have all of these small trees, presents, a small house, and all of those elements are sitting inside of our pickup kiln, holding at about 900 degrees. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to start to create the rest of our shape. So Cliff is going to go ahead and grab some molten glass. You can see this time it's on the end of a blowpipe. Now, a blowpipe is going to be a nice hollow pipe that we can use. Previously on all the rest of our objects, we'd been using the solid steel pipes. And on this one, we're going to go ahead and use that hollow pipe, put a little air into it, and now we get a blown bubble out of it. And so now that we have a hollow shape, we're going to go ahead and reshape it a little bit. We'll probably get a little bit more glass on top. After we get that glass on top, then we'll go ahead and start applying our color most likely.
We're going to do the color on the surface so we can reduce it.
Yes. So for those of you who had been watching before, one of the trees that Clifton was working on was doing that reducing where that color turns to a nice silver. So the plan is to do the same thing on this, where we're going to create a nice, almost trapezoid-like shape. So we're going to blow all of that shape out. We'll use that color, and then we'll reduce it, creating that silver color. So right now we're just allowing all that glass to cool off. We don't want to go back into the furnace to get more glass while it's hot. The reason is that bubble can collapse on itself. And so we'll lose the hollow inside and it'll become solid again. So we're allowing it to cool a little bit more. And then we'll get some more glass on top of it in just a second. So Cliff's going to go ahead and go back into the furnace, getting a little bit more glass on top. When we're doing this, we're exponentially increasing that size. So it's going to be 2-3 times larger than what it was before. So he's going to go and bring all that fresh glass out. Now you can see the inside is still being maintained. We have a nice hollow inside still. And so you can see that bubble's actually in there. Now Cliff's cooling off the pipe because the metal's going to be a little bit hot after he comes back. And then he's going to go ahead and start applying our color on top of it.
I'm going to get another gather on this, but I just want to get a little bit of black on there now.
Yeah.
And I'll get more clear and more black.
Yeah.
So it won't be transparent.
So we're going to get a little bit layer of a black underneath, just to make sure we have a base color. You can see Cliff's going into our metal scoops that houses all that glass. Now, we call this glass frit. It's a nice broken up glass for us. So it's just colored glass. This is similar to what Cliff is currently going into. And so he's using this almost black one, similar to the one on the left. And so what he's allowing for it to happen is that the glass is going to go ahead and heat up those small bits of glass, the frit, and then he'll go ahead and reheat and melt it. Now he's got all of his glass color that he wants on there, so he's going to go ahead and use our wooden block to go ahead and shape up that glass. Now we use a lot of fruit-based wood in here, so this is specifically a cherry wood that we use. The reason is that they tend to be a little bit lower in sap, which means that we don't have to deal with the sticky residue that will happen from it heating up. Additionally, it's not going to have any harmful chemicals like plywood would have. So we like natural fruit-based woods for most of our wooden shaping tools in the studio. So he's going to go ahead and reheat, reshape, and just prepare this glass for a little bit more on the next layer. The other tool he's using is a nice wet newspaper. Now this is about 6 to 7 sheets of folded newspaper. Now what's happening is that once it's soaked in water, it's going to hold enough water to be able to not catch on fire from the glass. And what will happen is over time that newspaper, the fibers in the newspaper are going to create a nice carbon layer, which allow it to kind of glide across the glass. And so that wet newspaper creates a small little vapor layer, so it won't fully ever touch it. There's that nice steam layer that'll be in between. And the carbon's also going to help, the carbon layer that gets formed from it being hot. So you can see Cliff's just going back and forth with the paper, shaping up the glass, blowing a little bit, shaping up the glass and blowing it. We're really looking for a nice, rounded, Q-tip-like shape to get more glass on top. The reason is is glass likes to gather in odd areas. It acts very similar to honey or molasses. So if we don't have a really good shape to start off with, then we're gonna get an uneven layer of glass on the next one. So he's just making sure we have a nice even layer, and then he'll go ahead and get some more glass. Now he's allowing it to cool down a little bit more before we get some glass.
Do another layer of color on the exterior to reduce this hot water.
And so once it's nice and cool, then he's gonna go inside of the furnace to get some more glass. So he's liking how it looks, so he's gonna go into the furnace. Whenever he goes into the furnace, you can see it's just gonna be nice and orange. But we can see in there a little bit more now. And so once he comes out, he'll go ahead and drip some of that off the end. And we have a nice rounded gather here. And so now he's just cooling off the pipe at the moment. Anytime we go inside of the furnace with that metal, it's gonna heat up quite a bit. And you can see he's gone ahead and gone back over to the color now. So he's getting more color on top of it. As we talked about it before, we want a really nice black underlay, but we're gonna silver out this top section. And so this is the layer that'll silver. The stuff that'll be underneath will still be black. So even if some of the areas are gonna be see-through, it won't matter, because we'll have that nice black layer underneath. Almost like a canvas with a painting. We've built up these colors to where something's gonna be covering it. Now, if you guys don't know, those are our reheating chambers. Reheating chambers typically are where we take the glass to go ahead and reheat all of it, make sure all the colors apply properly, make sure it all melts in properly and fuses back with the glass itself. Reheating chambers typically hold at about 2,300 to 2,400 degrees. 2,400 degrees is the ideal melting point for glass. That is where it's truly in its most molten form. It is viscous and movable at 2,100 degrees, which is where our furnace sits at. With the reheating chamber, it's really nice to have a lot hotter so we can heat it much quicker. You get a lot more movement and shaping out of it. So you can see the more and more glass that Clifton's adding, the more that layer gets covered up. And you can see it doesn't fully apply, especially with our frit glass. We kind of just get little speckles on there. And so the idea is that Cliff's going to go ahead and add multiple coatings of these speckles to try to get a more full coat. Now frit, as we talked about, is just that broken up glass, and there's a lot of different sizes, all the way down from a very fine powder to the larger chunks that Cliff's currently using. We also have glass color that comes to us in bars. So glass bars are actually going to be what is used to create very even layers of glass. And so we're always going to have a slight bit of texture that's noticeable with all the different frit sizes. You can tell that there's some little markings in between the layers of color. But if we had a nice bar of glass, we could overlay all of it to get a one smooth layer. Clifton's work actually currently focuses a lot with using bars and transparent bars to create really nice gradients in his pieces. But what we're doing now is we're using our metal table, our Marver, M-A-R-V-E-R. It's a nice it's a nice table that we can use to cool and shape the glass. So anytime glass is going to touch a metal surface, it's going to cool. And so what Cliff is doing at the moment is shaping up the glass, but he's also cooling that very tip. As he blows, if he blows all of it at once, if it's all hot, it'll create an uneven bubble. But what he's doing is he's going ahead and taking that glass, shaping up just the tip, so he'll kind of resurface that back in, and then he'll really focus all of his cooling and shaping on the tip. And you notice the tip is a lot darker than the rest of the shape. It looks a lot more black than the rest of it. That still looks really nice and orangish black. Once he likes that shape, he's going to go ahead and kind of even out a little bit more. He's shaping up that tip once again. Really focusing a lot of time on this. It's really important to make sure that the top or the tip of the glass is very, very cold for our next step. What will happen is we're going to go ahead and blow in one of these next couple of heats. And that blowing, we want to make sure goes down or actually widens out our shape. We don't want that really, really thick. We don't want that really, really thick spot to blow out at all. So that's why he's focusing so much on cooling this tip off and shaping it up. It's also helping to kind of push all that color in together as well. So he's going to bring it back over. Shape that back end to make sure it's controlled. Cool all of that tip again. He's really focusing all of that cooling to be on that tip. That way when he blows, you're going to notice the bubble doesn't blow out towards the tip of the glass where he's been touching it. It actually blows out on the sides where it hasn't been touched. So it'll blow again. We can see it gets wider near the pipe and not near the base of the glass. So after blowing it, he's going to go ahead and come back over and he's going to go ahead and grab a blow hose. Now a blow hose allows us to go ahead and blow while we're not beside it. This is going to be really important for Cliff on one of these next steps because what he's going to do is he's going to go ahead and shape it while he's at the bench. And while he's at the bench, he's going to shape and cool it with newspaper, and then he's going to blow as he's shaping it. So he's going to bring that back over. Measure out, use the newspaper to cool just the base, and as he measures out that and cools off that base, he's also blowing. So we can see that shape is getting wider and wider and wider near the way the pipe is. But the very bottom's still nice and thick, and that's going to be important whenever we're making our base for our snow globe, because all of the glass is going to attach at the bottom of the glass, where Cliff's thumb is at the moment. So he's measuring out that size again. He wants to make sure it's not too wide. If it's too wide, it's not going to fit in our globe that was already made. Reminder, if you guys are just joining us, currently we're making a snow globe. Cliff is going to be making the base of the snow globe, and this will be the part that all of our objects on the inside of the snow globe are going to fit onto. So at the moment we have a lot of different objects that are put into a pickup kiln that's off camera, and that pickup kiln houses a couple presents, some trees, and a nice house. And so they need a nice little platform for all of those objects to sit on top of. And so that is what Cliff is making at the moment. He's making that platform. So he's going to go ahead and use our tool, the metal jacks. Now the metal jacks are one of the most versatile tools that we have. We can use the pointed blades to go ahead and make a break-off point by creating a small line all the way around the glass. If you've ever had a crack in your window, in your car window, anything like that, you know over time that crack likes to spread. And so we use those same principles in here to where we create a nice line, so that way when we stress the glass later in the process with some water, it cracks on that line, and that's where it breaks. See, Cliff is also using calipers to go ahead and measure up that glass to make sure we're still at a correct size. Depending on if we're too big or too small, Cliff's going to go ahead and reshape it and move it a bit more. Now we're going for more of a tapered trapezoid at this point. So you can see a little bit on the board behind him, there's a slight sketch of what's happening. Kind of that tapered cone look, except much wider is what we're aiming for at the moment. The other nice thing is that Cliff's really only heating that top section at the moment. So Cliff's gonna go ahead and touch that with the newspaper, pushing that base back a little bit more. And then he's gonna go ahead and keep blowing, winding it out, allowing that top part to be where all the things are gonna stick. So you can see once again he's torching up that back line. He just wants to make sure it's nice and happy. If glass gets below 900 degrees, it's going to want to crack and break. And so this entire time that we're heating and going through this process, what we want to do is we want to make sure that glass is nice and happy. So we reheat it, reshape it, and do all of the stuff like that. If glass gets too cold, as we talked about just now, it breaks. So for those of you who haven't joined us inside of here, this is what we call the hot shop. We call it the hot shop because it's very hot. If you've been here for a little bit, you've heard me talk about some of the temperatures. But our furnace holds at about 2,100 degrees. In molten glass, its workability is between about 1,400 degrees and 2,400 degrees. So if at any point in time I say something looks cold in glass, cold is at about 1,000 degrees. So it's all relative in here. So we can see Cliff is really focusing a lot of heat on the back end of that shape right now. That's the section that he wants to focus on in this next heat. So he's really using that torch to give it a little extra boost of heat. That way when all of it gets hot, that spot's the hottest overall, which will allow him to blow it out easily. Whenever we blow into glass, glass likes to move where it's hot. So if he chooses those spots where it's hot with the torch, it's going to be a lot easier for him to control. So this is one of the torches that we mentioned earlier in the program. This is called our fluffy torch. We can use our fluffy torch to really get a nice, good overall heat. Also our loudest tool in here by far. And so we can see he's using that torch to really heat up that back end once again. The map gas is a good torch for getting very specific heat. The fluffy torch is a really good torch to be able to get a wide area. And so that's what he's doing at the moment. He's using that fluffy torch to be able to get a really wide area. This also allows all the other sections to cool down as he does that. So by keeping heat in one area, the rest cools. And as we just talked about, whenever he blows, it's going to move in the spot that the torch was at. So Cliff's giving it an overall heat, and we'll be able to see when he comes back, one of the areas should be hotter than the rest. So it all looks pretty orange right now. But you can see that edge where that sphere is. That's really the hottest spot. So Kevin is currently helping out by getting a wooden paddle. That wood paddle is going to help to flatten that top. And so Cliff is using the newspaper to control the edges while also blowing to expand it. And Kevin is pushing back that top so that way whenever they blow, it creates a nice edge on the very top. So where Kevin is paddling is where all of our little objects are going to go. So that's where all of our trees, our presents, and our little cabin's going to go. And so once again, he's using the calipers to go ahead and measure out those edges. And it sounds like everything's going perfect. It sounds like we have the right size for everything at the moment. So now, Kevin's gonna go ahead and start preparing a little bit of glass. And he's gonna use that glass to go ahead and pick up one of our first objects.
Wrap.
Ah, we're doing a wrap actually.
Wrap around the top rim. A little bit crafty.
So we're getting very crafty in here. Kevin's actually getting glass for a technique we called wrap. So what's great about glass is that we can always add more glass to it because they can fuse together. Whenever glass is hot and it touches another hot piece of glass, the chemical compound actually fuses together. And so Kevin's going to currently get what we call a bit of glass. That's just an extra amount of glass on a different pipe. Kevin's going to go ahead and heat all of that up, and then they'll bring it back over and they'll eventually attach that to the other piece of glass. Now, staying in the theme of a nice black color, Kevin has gone ahead and got a black bit. And so he's gotten 3 layers of color. So he's got 3 layers of color of black on there, and he's going to go ahead and match that with the colors that Cliff already got. And so Cliff at the moment is just keeping that glass nice and hot that's already shaped up. He doesn't want to heat it too much, otherwise it's going to lose its shape, but he doesn't want it to get too cold or else it's going to break. Kevin, in the meantime, is going to go ahead and start shaping up that extra bit of glass. Now, whenever he shapes it up, he wants to go for a very specific shape. So we're looking at more of a finger-like shape. The idea is that if we have this nice cylinder with a taper at the end, it's going to create a nice connection point, but it's not going to be so thick that it's going to become uneven. So by starting with a smaller tip, when we start to pull and rotate around, it's going to create a nice even layer of glass around the entire rim. So one of the important things about glass blowing is teamwork in here. So Kevin and Cliff have to be on the same page. Fortunately, Kevin and Cliff have been working together for quite a while. So they're both on the same page about quite a bit with what the other person needs whenever they're gaffing or whenever they're the main glass blower. And so Kevin's setting up a shape that Cliff likes. Once Cliff confirms that he likes the shape, they'll both coordinate and say they're good to go.
Yeah. Let's inhale that. Perfect. Suck in. Suck over.
So for those of you guys just joining us, as a reminder, we are SiNaCa Studios. We are a 501c3 nonprofit with a focus in community outreach and public education, all revolving around the forms of glass. And so what we're watching this evening is the Hot Shop. But we have 2 other studios that we focus on as well, with our kiln form studio and our torch working studio. The kiln forming studio is where we can create a lot of nice plateware and flatware, as well as a lot of different flat ornaments and things like that. We start off with flat glass, similar to mosaic tile or mosaic glass. We'll cut those into the shapes he likes, and then they'll all melt together. Now what's going to happen here is Kevin's going to go ahead and take that bit of glass and attach it. So Cliff's going to attach it where he wants. He's going to start rotating it around in a pretty even manner. He's looking for it to be about the same width and thickness the entire time. You can see it's a slower process because it's a little bit more precise. And once it gets to the very end, he's going to go ahead and make sure it lines up and then trail it off and go ahead and cut that end. Once it's cut, he's going to go ahead and reheat all of it. He wants to make sure that bit of glass that was just added is still hot, but that base should still be cold. If the base gets too hot, it's going to start moving. And so when he reheats this, you can see that lip that he just added is going to be very, very hot. I think they're gonna add a little bit more to it. They're gonna take that extra glass that they have, attach that layer, and they're gonna go ahead and cut it off. They're using that extra glass that they have to go ahead and attach some extra, what appears to be the small little anchor points. These could be used for a plethora of reasons. These will most likely be a staging area to where the globe will actually sit on. See, it's going to attach, pull it back, cut it, and then reheat again. And so they were just talking about it. We're going to do another one of the wraps, except it's going to be on the base this time. So you can see Kevin's going to go ahead and get some more glass. Now whenever we get glass and we want a whole lot of it, what we do is we go ahead and get glass, allow it to cool a little bit more, then get a larger amount of glass. So depending on how much we want, Kevin's going to allow this to super cool, or he's going to go right back into the furnace. Now this will get a good amount of glass, it won't get a crazy amount. At the same time, Cliff is working over on the other end, and he's reheating those little bits that were added on and shaping them up a little bit more, creating more stubs. So these are going to be the little anchor points for that globe that's going to go on top eventually. Now, as a reminder, the globe has already been made. It's cold. So it's already cooled down. We are just working on the base this evening, and we're working on the inside of the sphere. So Cliff's taking that taglet paleo, as it's traditionally called, and just using it to flatten out those edges. It's essentially a small marber that we can hold in our hands. So as Kevin is working on that extra bit of glass to get a wrap, Cliff is going to shape up the rest of it. And so they've both been working on their own independent things, but in a second we'll come together. So Kevin's gone ahead and got all the color that he needs on there. And he's going to do the same shaping technique that he did on the last one, creating almost a small point at the very tip and thicker at the end. That way when they pull and wrap it around, they'll get a consistent line as they go across. Now this technique's used in a lot of different ways. We saw Cliff use it as only one wrap around the entire body, but we could use it for multiple. If you ever come into our studio, in our gallery, we actually have a wonderful piece that is a white spiral on a plate. And so that uses the same technique where it attaches in one spot and then it'll turn quickly around the rest of the area. And that is what we call a body wrap. And so they are also doing a body wrap. They are just only going around once. Cliff is also heating up those areas, those extra bits that were added on earlier, and he's using the tweezers to go ahead and give them a little extra definition and shape. So Kevin just confirmed with Cliff that it's a good shape.
I'll be
good to go.
Ready?
And they're going to go ahead and bring it over. So Kevin was hot while Cliff was still working a little bit. And Cliff, when he said he was ready, was still working on something. So Kevin's bit got a little cold, and by the time Cliff was done, Kevin didn't quite like the heat anymore. So what's nice is they can just reheat it, and then they can come back and do it again. And it's always better to make sure that you're at a good spot before you do anything, because once you do it in glass, it's a little hard to take back after that, especially with our blown objects. Once you do something in a blown form, it's going to be a little harder. So they're going to go ahead and start that wrap again. You can see this time it's much thicker than the last. The reason for this is going to be the base of the globe. So we want to make sure we have a nice thick rim. And that thick rim is going to be more emblematic of the bottom part of a globe. And you can see this time Cliff cuts almost directly on that line he just made, and it'll come back, reheat it. And that reheating is going to help shape that back down, allow it to fuse back to the original section, as well as help to hide where that color was cut off.
Okay, big old white bit.
So now they're going to get a bit of white. So we've gotten to the point where we're a little too big for that first hole. Feel a lot hotter at this point. Once they open up a door, we can